Welcome to HMG Live.
How are we more responsible with our employees by making sure that we have created the most, equitable and inclusive workforce, and are taking, actions, not just words, but actions to ensure that we have a workplace where employees can do the work of their lives.
It is time to look at this thoughtfully and really seize on the opportunities that it provides us.
This is an opportunity to change the way we work, to change the way we collaborate, to change the culture of the whole workforce in the United States.
A lot of the decisions that you make may or may not be right at the end of the crisis, right? So you have to be courageous enough to continue to make those decisions very quickly.
The focus now is the fusion of human and technology, and how do we have organizations that are technology organizations, but are human, they're distinctly human.
This will be a time of innovation.
HMG Live virtual summits are offered by HMG Strategy, your global partner helping you reinvent an innovative future of work. A warm welcome to today's host, lead principal and CEO of HMG Strategy, Hunter Muller.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon for those folks in the East, and good morning for those folks in the West. Welcome to the 2020 Florida Virtual CIO Summit. I'm Hunter Muller, lead principal of HMG Strategy. My team and I are really delighted to be here with you today. I think, hey, look, we have an amazing agenda. I think a world-class agenda, reimagining business and the future of work, what you need to know now. So let's get rolling. A big thanks to our partners today. Today's summit is powered by Commvault, Darktrace, Illumio, T-Mobile for Business, as well as Zoom. More from them later. And a big warm thank you to the SIM chapters of Florida, Central Florida SIM chapter, South Florida chapter in Tampa Bay. And I believe we have Larry DiGiorgio as well as Mark Taylor. Mark, good to see you, and Larry, great to see you.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. This will be a wonderful event. We're really looking forward to it. The SIM Central Florida chapter has over 120 active members in our community. Through our philanthropic efforts, we've donated over $250,000 back into our community. We offer programs like monthly chapter meetings, golf tournaments, holiday parties, networking events on and off campus. We have a members in transition program for folks who are either currently unemployed or maybe looking to make a change. We've also got a SIM Women program for ladies who in IT technology who want to network together, and also invite-only dinners for CISO and CIO events. So look for more information from SIM Central Florida. Visit us at simcfl.org.
Great, thank you, Larry. Thanks for being such a great partner. And Mark Taylor, the SIM International CEO. Mark, good afternoon.
Hey, Hunter, how are you today? Thanks for the program. It's going to look like a great agenda.
Excellent. So what's new with SIM International?
Hey, there's a lot going on, and thank you so much for the work that you and the team in Florida is doing with the Central Florida chapter. I think Marcus Sessions is on today on the agenda today from the Tampa chapter, and we've got a great group down in South Florida as well. We're just thrilled to be a part of what you're doing, Hunter, and adding the energy to what's happening in the local chapters there in Florida. And thanks for the invitation to be a part of it, man. We really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Great to see you. We'll talk soon.
You too.
And Marcus Sessions. Marcus is the president of the SIM Tampa Bay chapter, as well as the VP of IT services for Tampa International. Marcus, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Hunter.
Great to see you, my friend.
Nice seeing you as well.
Hey, you win the most amazing HMG award, one of the best presenters. We all want to know how you do it.
Hey, I just try. I just speak the truth. That's the big thing, speaking the truth.
Truth is important. So let's just talk for 1 minute on setting the stage as an overarching theme of diversity and inclusion. Why is it so important? Why is it important now?
Well, Hunter, I mean, you know that diversity, there's plenty of statistics that are out there. McKinsey and Company has done plenty of, research on this. And having a diverse organization leads to better profits, a better organization, a better culture, happier employees. It's just one of those things that's been proven. So I won't specifically talk about some of those things, because those things are out there. The very serious thing about diversity is a very simple thing. Either you want to do it or you don't want to do it. As you know, Larry talked about, we have SIM women, and it's one of those things that we're trying to do and we're trying to focus on. But if you look at the bigger scale of diversity as a whole, you have to have intentional actions. SIM women is an intentional action. And what I would do is I would challenge IT, because if you think about it, we've been talking about the lack of women in IT for decades now, right? And it's gotten better. You have great leaders, female leaders, like Jennifer Greenman is on here, one of my personal favorites. We work with her a lot, and you have a lot of progress, but it's still not where it needs to be if we're still talking about it as a problem. So you have to have intentional actions. At this point, we have to challenge the industry as a whole to actually do something and make steps. And what I'll just say really quickly is, look in your budget, look in your strategic plan, look at your company ethos, value, mission, everything. If you don't have diversity in there, then you don't really want to do it. And if you don't really want to do it, hey, that's fine, but don't pretend like you want to do it, because the last thing is the workforce coming up now, after Gen Z, millennials, and the generation after that are the most diverse generations in history. And they're going to be looking for diverse workplaces. And if you don't have it, you're going to miss out on the talent, and you're not going to be able to actually move forward with a lot of things that you're doing. So
excellent.
That's one.
Excellent. Thanks so much for coming on the program. We'll see you later. We're going to lead the leadership panel. We'll see you later in the program. Thank you again.
Thanks, Hunter.
Excellent. Thanks for zooming in today, being part of today's program. I think, again, we have a world-class agenda, amazing summit. First up will be Cody Sanford. He's an EVP and Chief Information and Product Officer for T-Mobile.
How are you?
Cody, good to see you.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Hey, you're an exciting area in the world, this intersection of connecting the world, technology, of course, people and process, and you really have a fascinating title, EVP and CIO and Product Officer. Can you help us out with that's a big role, a lot of demands on you. Help us out. What does the role look like in your organization?
Thank you, Hunter. Yeah, I may be a little biased, but there's definitely nowhere else I'd rather be than where I am right now. My role is a combination of a very traditional CIO for a telecom operator, but like many of my counterparts in almost every industry, the convergence of product as a practice and as a discipline and as an organization and technology is a real opportunity and almost necessity for most of us. And we just acknowledged a couple of years ago that creating technology independence for our teams that are involved in launching products for our companies was really important. So I think of my role slightly differently than some CIOs. My job is to federate technology to the teams who need it most, predominantly teams who build products and services for our customers. So we've started to converge our product and our technology teams into one single organization. So I have that privilege of leading that for T-Mobile.
So there's no doubt we're all going through this amazing transition, probably well into it, over 120 days as the pandemic rolled across the globe. How are you helping your team transition, and how are you helping your leadership stay engaged?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And maybe I can just start by saying that I'm sure, like almost every company in the U.S., we share a lot of similarity we faced over the last 100 days and what we're going through right now. But we also face some unique challenges. And maybe I can just set the stage for you a little bit and share a little bit about what we did and what we're doing right now. But we have a very large company. We had a very large company up until April 1st, but most of you on this call probably know that when COVID hit in late February and early March meaningfully in the US, we were on the precipice of consummating the transaction with Sprint, which was one of the largest telecom deals in US history. And the combined new T-Mobile's scale, new scale, was a very significant evolution for us. We grew to a company of 140 million customers. We have 17 call centers, more than 80,000 employees, and tens of thousands of retail stores. And we had never worked together as a team in a single company before, nor had our employees had the chance to work together. that was the backdrop, but our immediate and acute realities were the same as everybody else. We needed to keep our employees safe, and we needed to keep our customers connected when it mattered most. So that's where we started. We just started in a ridiculously complex environment. So maybe I'll start with our safety first. We had one of the stories I share a lot when I'm talking about this is one of the first things we faced was not something that we traditionally face in IT, was we had to make sure we had PPE, masks and gloves getting out through our supply chain to our employees that were still working in stores before we started shutting down. And as everybody knows, those were hard to come by. It was very difficult to get those supply chains stood up. So we were dealing with the same thing almost every company was dealing with, which is how do we get masks and gloves and cleaning supplies to our employees, and also making sure that we could keep our network running in a very different way. Because if you think about traffic patterns for customers, how they used their phone before they were in shelter in place and how they used their phones after changed dramatically, which had significant impacts on traffic patterns on our network. So we had to deal with that immediate issues. And then very quickly, we had to start running the company. And running the company in a world where we didn't have 17 call centers we could put 20,000 employees in, and we had to change the way we worked in retail stores. So one of the first things we had to tackle in care was moving our 17 call centers and roughly 12,000 employees from work in call centers to work from home. And we had to virtualize that experience in homes for our 12,000 care agents literally overnight. In about 2.5 weeks, we moved all of our employees, or 97% of that employee base moved from call centers to working from their homes. So that was a huge step for us. We also had to build virtual retail to allow customers to interact with our retail stores. And we had to take our tens of thousands of employees that were working in offices and expand our VPN capabilities, our virtual desktop capabilities. And that all had to be done in remarkably short orders. But fundamentally, I should also offer this too. You know, one of the other things that we faced that we had to address was our customers were faced with the same financial realities that people are facing today, which is many of them were losing their jobs and were concerned about how to pay their bills. So we also had to make sure that we were being there for our customers and giving them flexibility to make it through this very tough period of time. So those were all the things we were working through, and my role is to make sure all that happened without a hitch. And I can't say it happened without a hitch, but it was a remarkable change to go through in a couple of weeks.
Well, it's amazing, right? A couple of weeks and 100 days later, and the world is definitely different, right? And this is the new normal. What do you think about the new normal and how to keep people, your team engaged, and what's worked for you?
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, I missed the office a little bit, Hunter. But we've learned some important lessons in the last 90 days. And I've read a lot of articles, and I'm sure many of the people on this call have as well, about what the new normal means. But we had some preconceptions about what was required for us to be productive and required for us to foster a culture that we take a lot of pride in. And that culture was grounded in very large hubs of employees working closely together, large events, lots of energy, especially in our call centers and our retail stores. And we had to turn it on its head and see how we could preserve the culture. And I will tell you, there was a lot of doubt about our ability to do that. Not because we didn't believe in our leaders, but fundamentally, we just believed that human interaction was necessary. And I think we've learned a couple of important things. Number one, I do think human interaction is necessary. But two, I think we came a lot further than we thought was possible. And I think the productivity we've been able to sustain and the energy and the culture that we've been able to preserve has definitely made us think very hard about what the new normal has to look like going forward in the role of telepresence and remote and distributed workforces. And I will say without a moment of hesitation that we will not go back to the way we were before, and we will be using these technologies in a very different way going forward, especially in the technology departments and organizations.
Interesting, Cody. Thanks so much. You know, when you think of 5G is right around the corner, and in some areas it's already here, how is that going to change the enterprise and the enterprise go-to-market in general?
Yeah, it's a great question, and everyone's been inundated with 5G messaging. But I think that this last 100 days has reinforced just how important connectivity is, and not just connectivity as in connection you get in the cell phone, but how important broadband connectivity for families in the digital divide. If you think about education and families that need high-speed internet access, but have one to no choice in their markets and are paying far more for far less quality than we can offer with the promise of 5G broadband. I think there are some very basic fundamentals for society and our industry that we can immediately take advantage of. And T-Mobile's in a unique position to do that because of the spectrum positions that we have nationally. But first of all, connectivity. But as you start thinking about what you were just referring to, Hunter, which is what does a future workforce relationship look like that can build on 5G technology? What does a telepresence look like that, despite how awesome you look on screen, what would it look like if we could really create a you're there experience through a virtual telepresence, through higher bandwidth capabilities? So there's a huge opportunity in that marketplace, but also in just bringing 5G connectivity to automation, real-time supply chains, enabling cities to have far better AI on the edge, enabling telemedicine and telesurgery. All of these, I think we've just reinforced how important those are to our future, and also reinforced why 5G is such a critical investment for T-Mobile and a critical product for our customers.
So any final comments or ideas about why T-Mobile now, why you folks are the place to go to look for as an enterprise provider?
Well, I will just build from where I started, which was we have almost 3x the spectrum assets of our two other competitors. And we have a 5G network that's second to none. We already cover 225 million Americans with our 5G network. And we will have, hands down, for the foreseeable future, the best 5G network. I mean, that's first and foremost why I would consider us. But secondly, and most importantly, at least for me, is what we stand for our consumers and for our enterprise customers, which is a distinctly customer-first company. And I mean that to the fabric of everyone that we hire and everything that we do for our customers in value and service that we provide and the people who provide it. So if I was making a decision, I would definitely be looking at those two things. Best value for the best 5G network with the best people seems like a good option for me.
And the customer centricity is key. Hey, Cody, thanks so much for coming on the program. Thank you for supporting us. I look forward to future engagements with you. You're amazing. Little rock star.
Thank you, Hunter. I really appreciate the time.
Great, Cody. Talk to you soon. Next up, Jennifer Greenman. Jennifer is the CIO of the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, based in Florida. Jennifer, welcome to the program. It's great to see you again today.
Oh, nice to see you too. And thanks for the shout out, Marcus. It's always a pleasure to work with you as well.
Oh, nice. What a neat connection there. So how, in this whole post-pandemic environment we're in right now, how's your organizations leverage digital innovation and your go-to-market to engage your clientele?
Sure. Well, so our organization, Cancer Treatment Centers of America, is a national network of hospitals and clinics that is exclusively focused on providing patient-centered, exceptional cancer care. And as Hunter mentioned, we're based in Boca Raton, Florida, is where our headquarters are. But we do have a national presence. CTCA has long been a recognized leader in delivering a compassionate and patient-centered experience to people fighting this terrible disease. And even long before my own arrival, CTCA was very innovative in delivering digital tools. So things like patient education and interactive engagement platforms to empower our patients and our providers. What we're now focused on, however, is leveraging digital innovation to impact the care of exponentially more patients than we have been able to in the past. So we're doing that through a combination of consumer-facing technologies, so things like virtual care platforms, patient portals, which have long been around in the market, but really have incredible potential to create a much deeper level of engagement with our patients and their families and their caregivers. We're also leveraging workforce solutions, so things like CRM and curated knowledge bases to help empower our workforce so that we can deliver the best possible cancer care for our patients. Also, we are continuing to invest in data and analytics platforms that will lead to the discovery of new treatments and insights into the mechanisms of this disease. So as I think about this as a technology leader in my organization and how I apply these needs to our strategy, I know that the digital products that will be key to transforming care delivery, and that's true across healthcare, not specifically cancer care. I know that all of these products will be sourced from a wide variety of players across the ecosystem. So established players that we already work with, new players, internally developed, externally developed, open source. Our role in IT is to create a foundation for secure and scalable interoperability so that we can support agile growth within our organizations now, but also into the very uncertain future that, of course, now we're all facing even more so with COVID. In our organization, our technology strategy, we are accomplishing this through a very robust API layer that allows us to connect diverse solutions to create a very seamless patient and provider digital experience.
Excellent. Jennifer, it looks like you have the whole digital side nailed. Really impressed. When you think about the people side, your people in your team, how do you keep them engaged and inspired in this remote work from home environment that we're all in?
Well, one of my key strategies is to emphasize a connection to purpose. And I'm fortunate in the sense that healthcare organizations do tend to have very strong value systems and an orientation around common mission. And that's very helpful for me and for our teams as an intrinsic motivator. And what I've observed during the ongoing COVID pandemic is just this incredible effort by our teams, by our technology teams and our partners throughout the organization to create robust digital processes that enable a higher level of cancer care, either at home or in the traditional hospital setting. There's this palpable sense of pride by all of our teams. And I find this very rewarding as a technology professional to observe, but there's this strong pride in being able to contribute in a very meaningful and often very personal way, which is important given the connection that all of us have in our lives to cancer in some way. And so, as you noted, the people is usually the hard part. You know, I often tell my colleagues at my organization or perhaps across the community that, you know, technology is usually the easy part. The tools are critical enablers of transformation, but we have to be mindful of the two Ps, so the people in the process and the PPT triad. I think by now we all have learned the importance of process reengineering in any technology project. But we are still, I think, often very guilty of neglecting the people aspect of change management. And that has always been important for us, particularly in healthcare, given the very people or person-oriented nature of our services. But also, as we proceed, as we move forward in this very uncertain future that we're facing, and our workforce becomes more distributed, more autonomous, and quite frankly, more anxious, given the environment that we're in, this connection to purpose, this focus on change management and people is going to continue to be top of mind for us as technology leaders.
You know, thank you, Jennifer. When you think of the role of the CIO post-COVID in this new era, what do you think about in terms of the potential and the opportunity for the role of the CIO?
So I think the role of CIO now more than ever is recognized as a transformation leader, more than just perhaps the traditional view of CIO as operator. I think we as a CIO and CISO leadership team, we have to build on this momentum. And we need to use this to drive further change within our organizations, particularly given the uncertainty that lies ahead. I think I can speak for myself here, but perhaps for others on the call, that many of us have had to really refine our ability to adapt and adjust in recent months, you know, in a way that we probably never thought was possible, rolling out new solutions in days instead of weeks or months. I think that this is something we need to really embrace. This is a strength that we have to cultivate and grow as a recognized transformation leader into the future. We cannot return to the pre-COVID world very structured and sometimes rigid practices and processes to drive IT service delivery. I think we have to recognize that we were successful in this environment. And in fact, many of us thrived by being agile and being adaptive to the needs of our organizations. And so this, probably more than anything else, will be the critical success factor for CIOs in years to come.
You know, when you think about CIOs promoting the connection of purpose in an increasingly distributed and remote workplace, what do you think about?
Well, I think that we have to be able to continue to, you know, in healthcare in particular, but certainly any industry, we have to remind everyone all the way from, you know, the direct care provider at the patient's bedside to our teams who often have little to no direct interaction with patients, but we have to always be reminding our workforce of why we're here, the why that is so critical for what we do, and particularly fighting a disease as awful and as personal as cancer. And so I think that's our role as leaders of any type, CIO, CEO, COO, CFO, is to just constantly reinforce with our teams why we are doing what we're doing. And I find personally storytelling is a very effective approach to do that. And I think that's true across a variety of different topics. Diversity, inclusion, another great example where storytelling can be, I think, so powerful to help inspire our teams and remind us why we're here, why we're delivering on this critical mission that we have. And it actually is one that works quite well regardless of the channel. So it's something that can be very effective as a tool, whether you're on site, witnessing or interacting firsthand with care providers and patients and their loved ones, or even remotely. I think you can still have a very powerful and personal experience through storytelling.
Excellent stuff. Totally agree on the storytelling idea. When you think about the trying time that we're all going through with this work from home environment, and many people working in isolation or in suboptimal scenarios, how best to stay connected to a network of peers in the technology industry? What are some just quick tips and ideas on what's working for you and what you've done in your career over the years?
Sure. Well, it takes effort for sure. And, I am very grateful for colleagues in the community, much like Marcus, to use a great example, of people who really do cultivate those relationships and help create forums, whether they're historically in person, and now we move to more of a virtual format. So things like virtual happy hours, or even just video calls with colleagues. I find that to be very important to foster that sense of connection, but also to have really sort of intent. I think Marcus described that as well, being very intentional in how we approach that and what the goals and objectives we have for creating a sense of community, how we can apply the knowledge and experiences that we've had personally to help elevate and amplify the strengths of our technology community. So those are just some ways. I obviously rely a lot on my personal network, and I'm incredibly grateful to have a lot of very supportive colleagues throughout the country who have helped me grow. And I know that I have an important duty to help return that and help grow the next generation of technology leaders, particularly as a plug here for female technology leaders.
Awesome, Jennifer. Please come on HMG Live again. And thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Great to see you.
Thanks.
Next up, Mike Mastrole. Mike's the VP of Global Systems Engineering at Illumio. Folks, Illumio is a company you really want to know. Mike, welcome to the program.
Welcome, Hunter. Thank you.
Good to see you again. Hey, I did a little background work on your company. Fascinating company. Your founder, CEO, Andrew Rubin, and an amazing board, as well as probably the tier one best in the valley backers, right? Including Thompson at Microsoft, Benioff at Salesforce, and Jerry Yang at Yahoo, a co-founder. What do they know that we should know now?
Well, I mean, one of the things we learned early on is, the problem of lateral movement, right? So companies are dealing with it more and more, right? Especially as we have more devices in the network that can be, essentially can gain remote access by an adversary. So what happens is they're assuming lateral breach, and a lot of big companies have adopted our software to solve a big problem with lateral movement inside the data center.
And let's talk about how big lateral movement, the problem is. How big is it?
Well, it was a big problem early on. We see where people get into the network and they move away laterally, often sometimes 146 days until they find really the crown jewels, right? And once they have those crown jewels, they then get exfiltrated out of the data center, right? And at that point, it's a breach that the company has to disclose. It's actually become a bigger problem now that everybody's working from home, because not only have to worry about lateral movement inside the data center, but lateral movement inside the home from, let's say, a home device, or for somebody's child's gaming computer, which is essentially access. And now, essentially what a lot of companies have done is they take an Ethernet cable and they put it inside their homes from the organization itself.
So this isn't a new trend, is it?
Segmentation has been around for a long time, coarse grain segmentation, But the idea of doing micro-segmentation is about 6 years now. And really, there's a couple of reasons why companies are doing it. One is regulatory compliance, right? So PCI specifically calls for segmentation. There's a lot of financial services companies that have been asked to segment their SWIFT infrastructure, their digital payments application. Regulations like CBAS and other things that are forced, and GDPR are forcing them to do it internationally. So that's one reason why companies do segmentation. Another is the result of a breach, right? So the board comes down and says, what are we fundamentally going to do differently to basically stop lateral movement? And that's not buying or switching antivirus vendors or getting a better network intrusion prevention system. It's something fundamentally different, and that's micro-segmentation. And rarely what we see is just someone that wakes up in the morning and says that, you know what, we want to do this just because it seems like a good idea. It's usually because of regulatory compliance or some sort of breach.
Okay, so about 120 days ago, we had a different threat landscape. Now there's a lot more exposed real time. Talk to us a little bit about why segmentation is so important now with this distributed work from home environment.
Sure. I mean, there's probably a bunch of people on this panelist that may have video cameras that record to some sort of, appliance. When was the last time you patched that, right? There's also other things like sprinkler controllers that control sprinklers in the house, right? All these things can be accessed remotely through some sort of vulnerability, and that gets an adversary on the network. I mean, think about it. If I'm an adversary and I'm going to attack a specific company, I can go to LinkedIn and find out what are the employees of the company, and then from there try to target them specifically, right? So there's all sorts of ways that people are being targeted now. And when you add the home as an attack vector, it's another attack vector people have to worry about because, sometimes people use split VPN, which means they can talk to their network at home as well as the corporate network that they VPN into. And that could be another pathway that an adversary can get inside the data center.
So Mike, we can talk about segmentation. Basically, how does a company go about doing it in an orderly way?
Yeah, so the way I see security architects implement this successfully, and Illumio is very good about shepherding our customers through this process. A lot of people think when it comes to do segmentation, you have to blow up the data center and literally overhaul the network, or do it everywhere. Not the case. Start small. We usually start with a crown jewels application like a PCI environment, a payments application, patient record data. If you're a healthcare. So we start in that environment, we get an application segmented. And the thing is that once we know that application is segmented, it provides the confidence that they can then segment more things. And at the same time, the most important crown jewels is actually protected, right? So that's the way to go about it.
And when you think about companies, how successful they are, and why do they struggle with it?
Well, they struggle with it because, when a security architect goes to the infrastructure team and says, let's go ahead and segment, the knee-jerk reaction is to use network devices like firewalls or zones or ACLs on switches, or they use hypervisor-based technologies. And they lack three things when they do that. One is they lack the visibility like a map. They need the map of the application and how it's actually communicating. The second thing is that there's usually an infrastructure upgrade that if you use those hypervisor or network-based technologies, that needs to happen. And the third thing is they struggle with policy, right? So they write a policy on a Saturday night at 1 a.m. and they hope that on Monday morning that policy is corrected and it'll break the business, right? With Illumio, we provide a safe, simple, and easy way to get to segmentation using a host-based overlay approach.
Interesting. You work with a lot of CISOs and a lot of CIOs over the years, and there's always been a chasm, a bit of a rub between, tension between the CIO and the CISO. More than ever, though, they have to be working closely. Any ideas or tips that how a CISO can work better with a CIO, and conversely, how a CIO can work better with a CISO?
Yeah, I would say communicate more, understand what the goals are, what you're trying to get done, and then evaluate all the ways that you could possibly get to that specific goal, right? You don't just fall back on what everybody has been used to in the past, like network methodologies and things that we've all done. I mean, security policy has been enforced on the network for the last 25 years. Think of a new way to do things, right? There's a new way to do a lot of things now, a lot of innovation that's happened, especially during this pandemic. We've seen a lot of technology companies innovate with new solutions. So constantly be researching.
Interesting. And I'm guessing you folks are easily accessible on your website and on LinkedIn.
Yes, illumio.com. That's the best way to take a look at us. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is michael@illumio.com if you want to find out a little bit more, and I'm happy to work with you guys.
Yeah, final comment or idea around leadership, leadership from the CIO, leadership regarding the whole security agenda, and the importance of segmentation. When you think about it and prioritize it on a 10-point scale, why is it so important?
Lateral movement will happen. So it's a 10 out of 10, right? Lateral movement will happen. People will break into the data center. I mean, think about it. It's happening all the time. A lot of people I speak with on the security side, they're getting inundated with millions of alerts. And a lot of the security technologies that they have all basically deal with the fact that somebody's already inside the data center. My recommendation is assume that someone's going to come into the data center and figure out how you create that friction on that lateral movement.
Scary thought that somebody probably, what are the percentages that they're already breached in an organization?
Well, that's a tough question. It depends on the industry, right? It depends on the, many of the biggest banks have disclosed breaches. Lots of healthcare is disclosing breaches. The National Institutes of Health warned a lot of the research hospitals, like the Sloan Ketterings of the world, that they should look out for this sort of activity because, there's people looking to get, some intellectual property and they're looking to steal it.
Hey, Mike, thanks so much for coming on the program. It's always good to see you and looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, Hunter.
Great job. Next up, the future of work with Harry Moseley, the global CIO of Zoom. Harry, welcome to the program.
Well, I can't seem to start my video. There we go. Okay.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you too. So this is Florida, right?
We are in Florida, but we're broadcasting on the Zoom platform worldwide.
Right. So I know that part, but given that we're in Florida, I should probably do this.
There we go. Some palm trees.
Yeah, and then I should probably do this, right?
There you go. Like the entertainment factor.
Yeah, but given that we're working, I won't do either of those.
Hey, Harry, before we get into the Zoom discussion, just a minute or two on your background. I mean, 3.5 CIO jobs over spanning 3 or 4 decades, an amazing history of success in IT.
Thank you. Yes, very proud of of my career and worked for great firms and great leaders and being supported by great teams. So it's been a wonderful experience.
And then a Zoom update. Eric recently was recognized in Barron's as one of the top 25 CEOs of our time this year. Congratulations.
Yes, Eric's a wonderful individual, super smart, super kind, very humble, and truly a terrific leader in all sorts of ways.
When you think about work from home, what are you seeing as lessons learned in this post-pandemic environment that we're in? Lessons learned from some of your top tech execs that you're networked in with around the world, Harry.
Yeah, so I think that it's different as you go from geography to geography. In the U.S., a lot of people have the ability to work from home, but a lot of people don't have the ability to work from home. If you, case in point, 2 people in an apartment in Manhattan with a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, both are working from home and kids are on Zoom, getting educated. Not the most conducive environment. Kids don't particularly, sort of understand the notion, 4 and 6-year-old don't understand the notion of sort of learning at home. They're meant to be going to school. And mom and dad are home, they're meant to be playing a game with me. So, they had to put duct tape on the floor of their apartment so that the kids understood where the work boundary was. I think, as you just noted, I've had a long career in technology. So we've had an interesting journey at Zoom over the last, 6 months, if you will. The first 4 months were particularly interesting as we grew to supporting over 300 daily participants on the platform. The lesson I've learned and maintained as we've gone through this crisis is not to panic. And we have a fundamental principle that we follow at Zoom, which is, sort of understand, identify the problem, understand the problem, then figure out what's the root cause behind the problem, and then go to solutioning. Many people sort of figure out, well, we think this is the problem, and they jump to the solution without understanding the root cause. And so that philosophy has served us extraordinarily well.
Interesting. Well, great advice. When you think about the Zoom world we live in now, any tips for your users in work and at home?
Yeah, so, is it working from home or living at work? That's the first question. There's a tendency sort of like to fall out of bed into the office and then fall out of the office back into bed, get some meals in between and, but not a lot of time for relaxation. What people don't understand is that the profile of working from home is dramatically different from the profile of working in the office. In the office, you get those natural breaks. People interrupt you, people have conversations, you walk to a meeting. Here it's kind of like, you can just sort of swivel on your chair and you're back in the next meeting. One of the features that we get asked about a lot is when are we going to have the next meeting so I can just go from the next meeting to the next meeting to the next meeting without having to leave this meeting to start a new one. So I think it's very important that you have a discipline to the degree that you can. Put in those forced breaks, put in those breaks where you're going to take the dog for a walk, hang out with the kids, take a walk around the block if it's a nice day out and things of that nature. So have those forced breaks. I think that's super important. The fact is that, many organizations have found that employees who are working at home are actually more productive than working in the office. So I fundamentally believe, as do many of my clients' peers, also fundamentally believe that this has changed the work profile forever, and we're going to see a lot more of the distributed work. The myths of like working from home as being ineffective and not productive have gone, and employers have learned many other things, one of them being that they can now be geographically agnostic. Really I need the best athlete. Where is the best athlete? They're in, Chicago, they're in Arkansas, they're in wherever you like. They're in Florida.
Right. It really redefines building a winning team, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like the borders are gone. Yeah. I was talking to, not to get into the politics, but I was talking to somebody earlier this week about, so they're asking me, well, how does the H-1B visa clamp down sort of, how do you think it's going to affect Zoom and companies, period? And I said, well, you don't need the visa anymore. You can hire somebody from wherever they are. They don't need to actually relocate to the US. I can hire somebody in France. I can hire somebody in Germany. I can hire somebody in Italy. And they don't need to travel. They can actually live in their country.
This really is a game changer, isn't it?
I think the world has seen the light. Video is the new voice. And, let's talk about travel. It's kind of like, Hunter, if it wasn't for COVID-19, where would we be today? We would be in Florida physically. I used to be on 3 or 4 flights a week prior to March the 1st. Haven't been to an airport since March the 1st. Don't plan to be at an airport between, sort of quite honestly for the rest of this calendar year. And if I do, it won't be for work. It'll only be to go and see, my kids somewhere.
Thank you, Harry. When you think of it, the other big piece here is culture. How do you maintain it and then grow it in this distributed environment?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to learn different things. I think one of the biggest challenges is like when you onboard new people, they don't, how do you meet new people? It's like, when you all used to go to the office and the new employee would go to the office, people would see the person, they'd see the person, they could introduce you. It's very hard to do that in the virtual world, but I think we're going to see some technology come to bear that's going to allow us to collaborate more interactively in a virtual world. But it's maintaining culture is going to be hard. But I think we're going to see some great things happening in that space.
Jennifer talked about storytelling, and I know you believe in storytelling, Harry. We've had some interesting presentations from you over the years. How important is kind of the storytelling via the Zoom platform, any video platform? How important is that?
Yeah, I think storytelling is not so much about sort of the Zoom platform, but I think storytelling is important because people remember stories. It's like, I remember an article I read in the New York Times several weeks back. At least I think it was the New York Times. I might be corrected on that, but it was. I remember reading the article, and the headline read as follows: "Social distancing, you must be joking." And then you read the article, and it goes, "I know more about my colleagues than I ever thought I ever would in my entire life." I've met their spouses, their partners, their parents, their grandparents, their children. I've met dogs, cats. I've met snakes. I don't know about the snakes, but anyway, I've been in their kitchens, their living rooms, their dining rooms. I've been in their offices. I've also been in bedrooms, and I've been in bathrooms. And so, and it's, I was on a board. I was on a board meeting, and the CEO is in the middle of making his executive presentation, and his wife comes in and goes, "Can you hold the baby?" And he goes, "Sweetheart, it's like I'm in the middle of a board meeting." And she goes, "I didn't ask you what you were doing. I asked you, could you hold the baby here?" And now he's holding the baby. He continues with his executive presentation. There's 12 of us on the board meeting. Not one of us said anything about the baby or the interruption. He just went right on, and we continued the dialogue. And then, sometime later, his wife came in and took the baby away. So, I mean, that's the new normal. The cat walks past the camera. You don't even like pause. You just keep talking, right?
Right. That's fascinating stuff. People are talking more and more about the importance of innovation and how to reinvent or reimagine their business in this environment of disruption. Anything that you've learned in the past 3 months that you want to share again?
Yeah, I think that, so the notion of, we've had the notion of in technology for years now about sort of moving from waterfall to agile. And I think decision-making has also, been waterfall for way too long. And so it's much more of an agile. It's like I was, again, talking to the CIO for one of our big clients this morning, and he completely agreed. It's like the notion of establishing my criteria and weighting them and rating the different solutions and scoring those, all that has gone out the window. Now it's like, Hunter, this is what I'm looking at. What do you think? Allison, this is what I'm looking at. What are you guys using, and what do you think? It's like I'm calling up my trusted network of CIOs that I know and trust in the industry, and I'm asking them what they think and what they're doing. And that's how I'm getting to the solution. It's like, these days of weeks and months of evaluations are kind of like over.
Right.
It's all about speed. It's all about now.
Speed, now, trust, and the peer network, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The peer network is huge. The other thing that I've observed over the last several months is that, sort of, as I've maintained for years, every company is a tech company. You either build tech or you run on tech. Without tech, you haven't got much of a company these days. Technology over the last 3-4 months has obviously elevated right to the management committee and to the board. And my one hope is that the management committee and the board keep technology there. It belongs at the boardroom table. It absolutely is critical. It's not optional. It's probably one of the most strategic elements in your entire company besides your human capital, which is obviously number one.
I completely agree with everything you said. Brilliant. That was a moment. So thank you so much for coming on the program. Thank you for being such a great partner of HMG at Zoom, and a great industry colleague and friend.
Likewise, thanks for being here. My wish is for you, your team, and everybody on the call that everybody stays healthy, your families, your colleagues, etc. And let's hope we can get the COVID-19 behind us sooner rather than later, and look forward to connecting with you on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody. Cheers. Yep. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Harry. Take care. Next up, we have the Reimagining the Business and the Future of Work panel session. First up is Tony Ambrozie. Tony's got an amazing position. He's a Senior Vice President of Technology and Engineering Excellence at the Walt Disney Company. I think everyone in the world knows Tony, the Walt Disney Company, and it always connotates such a great, heartfelt feeling. Welcome to the program, Tony.
Well, thank you for having me.
Good to see you. So tell me a little bit about your role. What a fascinating title.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, isn't it? So we do a number of things around technologies, obviously in digital, data, all those things, a lot of innovation, all those things that really are have been very useful for in this period of crisis and in this period of reopening, if you want. Frankly, no one could have prepared for the business to stop and most of the economy to freeze in place. So basically, that's what happened to us, and there was no playbook. And the things that we have been doing for a while and our organization have been doing for a while, have been helping a lot.
What have you been focused in on in terms of helping the company transform and stay current in this changing environment?
Well, obviously, in terms of technology, really, we've been focusing on a number of things, right? Had to help the business models, the business, to go through the crisis. But first of all, it's a number of things such as accelerating the digital experiences that we have been building for quite a while. Clearly, that's becoming, whether it's the parks and resorts or the stores. Number two, accelerating and using data even more, which is very critical. We need to know what's happening. We need to know what the market is doing. We need to be able to figure out how to predict what could and would happen. What we also have been very fortunate to have done, we invested over the years in our systems, and so we've had business or systems that are flexible and integrated enough to support this change of the business process.
Tony, how has your leadership style evolved crisis?
Well, we have had distributed teams for quite a while, right? Now we have distributed team members, all of us working from home. And that has been challenging. We've done much better than we all expected, but still there are some challenges. Because obviously it's a lot easier to miss people from the information flow occasionally. And then, those hallway conversations and water cooler interactions that are so important because they lead to new ideas and new solutions, they have not been happening. So in terms of leadership, if we haven't been doing that already, we as leaders must become great connectors. That is, connecting ideas, connecting people, definitely. So we've become nexus of connections. Number two, must ensure information flows to whoever needs it in a very liberal way. And then, we must create opportunities for the serendipitous interactions that create those new ideas. Now, at the very human level, if you want, some of our team members may be struggling during this crisis in this environment in ways that are not immediately obvious. We as leaders need to be very close to them to detect those signs and be flexible and be very supportive, even more so than ever. So.
Excellent, Tony. Thanks for coming on the program. Stay right with us. I'll be back. I'll circle back to you in a minute. Next up is Andrew McIntyre. He's the Senior Vice President of Technology and Innovation at Vinik Sports Group. Andrew, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about Vinik Sports Group.
Vinik Sports Group is the parent company of the Tampa Bay Lightning and Amalie Arena. We are the marketing rights holder for the University of South Florida and the Yuengling Center, which is their arena on campus where they play men's and women's basketball and women's volleyball. We also run the Identity Tampa Bay, which is a lifestyle OTT. And we also run the Tampa Bay Entertainment Properties, which is an organization that's built on leveraging our expertise in live events, commercial sales, and facility management, and taking that to properties that fit into our ecosystem.
Wow. So you've been challenged keeping the lights on and keeping your fans engaged, right, over the last 100 days. Where are you now and where are you going in the future?
Yeah, well, it's to your point, it's been extremely challenging. Obviously, in mid-March, we shut down all events at the arena. That includes the concerts. We were scheduled to have the men's NCAA tournament. We were scheduled to have WrestleMania. So we've had quite a difficult run when it comes to shutting down the arena and then really shutting down all the events. One of the benefits of the strategy that we are taking, which is that kind of multi-pronged strategy to the market, is that we do have other facilities and other venues that we are supporting, and we're able to leverage those to kind of diversify our portfolio and begin to spread out. But it has been challenging, as the lion's share of our entire revenue lines are really tied to events and really activating in those venues.
Anything that's in the public domain in terms of going digital with any kind of digital experiences?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things, and just a quick little hint, what's happening in case people haven't been watching what's happening on the NHL side of the house, but there's been some recent announcements with regards to the restarting of the season. And a key piece of that approach is the restarting of training camps, which occurs on Monday. On the 26th of July, the teams will be flying to our hub cities. So we have 2 hub cities that are still being finalized, but pretty darn close. Toronto for the Eastern Conference and Edmonton for the Western Conference. So our players, coaches, and supporting staff will be located in those bubbles and kind of locking that down. And then the restart of play will occur on the 1st of August. And some of this information is all in the public domain. So for us, what's been really challenging and really accelerating a lot of the concepts that we've been talking about from a strategic standpoint are, how do we engage the fan base when we don't have the venue to be the anchor for those experiences? And we've been doing lots of different pilots and tests and different activations, whether they be live talk shows through social media platforms. We have a pretty interesting series called Doc Talk with Killer, which is one of our players. And he basically has taken his jet ski around Davis Island and interviewing other sports individuals that are working through the pandemic as well. We also have launched some other second screen activations. One's called Turbo Trivia. So on the Turbo Trivia side of the house, it's like an online trivia for all things happening on the Lightning side of the house. But it's, again, re-engaging that fan base who want to stay connected to the team and understand what's going on. And then working with Fox Sports Sun, we've been rebroadcasting, past games. And when we do those rebroadcasts, we're also enhancing those to actually share insights from players and coaches and other people, part of the organization, to kind of rehash the entire game itself and provide more color about what were they experiencing during that time, the emotions, the changes, some of the philosophies. So even though it's not a live event, you're still getting a new lens into what that experience would be. And of course, all of this is leading into, hopefully, what we're going to see in the near future is some new opportunities when it comes to gaming and gambling, and specifically that second screen experience tied to that.
Oh, excellent. A little bit on the second screen experience.
Yeah, so the second screen experience is really, what we believe is a key piece for engaging that the next generation. And so when you think about your traditional way of consuming, games, it's either you're at home watching a game through your television or through your local provider, or coming to the arena itself. The second screen is really all around, how do we enhance that experience? How do we provide more insights, whether that's statistics, whether that's probabilities of scoring opportunities, whether that's unique views and insights into the game itself. So if you're at home and you're only getting the broadcast view, is it possible to get new views into, whether it's a blue line view, whether it's an overhead view and watching the different players move throughout the ice? Again, enhancing the data side of the house, which is like scoring opportunities, which is another really interesting piece. If you can start to see the momentum of the game begin to shift, where you start to see one team putting more pressure on another, that will eventually lead to a score. So lots of different things that would, again, enhance the traditional way of watching hockey. Now, hockey in general is just such an exciting sport to watch anyway. So just thinking about all the different ways that you can overlay that with that information is pretty exciting.
Very cool. Thank you so much for coming on the program, Andrew. We'll circle back to you in a minute.
Great.
Next up is Quintin McGrath. Quintin's the Senior Managing Director of Technology Management Enablement at Deloitte. Quintin, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Andrew.
Good to see you, and one of a relatively new Florida resident, right?
Yes, indeed, and looking forward to connecting with a number of the people locally. So yes, very excited about that.
Welcome to the state. And we've been working together, collaborating for quite some time. Quintin, you have a unique perch at Deloitte.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about your unique space that you cover.
Yeah, sure. So a couple of things. I'm part of Larry Quintin, who's the global CIO, his global executive team, with specific focus on areas of innovation, architecture, change, etc. And some of the key aspects I look at is just how do we help our next generation leaders? And so focus on the various generations in the organization and help the generations grow and become the leaders that we need them to be in the coming generations. And so a lot of the work is figuring out, so how can we help, firstly, as an internal IT organization, our client service teams serve the clients, and how can we build up teams inside our organization, the global organization, to be really effective in these times.
You know, I think it's fascinating too. You do study 5 generations, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, so we look at in the organization today, and many of you all know this, we literally have 5 different generations. It goes all the way back to the traditionalists, all the way through to the Gen Z, so the ones that were born around about 2000, year 2000. And it's interesting just seeing how that is starting to change now. So I was looking at one of the sites this morning, and they were talking about around about 5% of our organizations are Gen Z, so the latest generation have come in. The majority of the workforce is actually sitting now in the millennials, and that's a growing population. And so how the organization changes and how we then operate as an organization fundamentally changes, because each of those generations has got different drives and different desires of what they want from the organization and leadership. It's been really interesting to see in recent studies that we've done, Deloitte as an organization. We do a regular millennial study, in fact, millennial and Gen Z now study, and just watching how that is changing in terms of what the expectations are, the demands on leaders to be much broader. So think about the society as well. So a social enterprise rather than just one that focuses on profit purely. So how do we then impact the broader community? So that our people, making sure we're making profits, but also affecting our community. And so the need for us to think differently, and this has only been accelerated and amplified by the COVID experience, and also certainly the experience we've had in terms of the civil unrest around the countries. And so just watching the demands of how we have to change as leaders to think differently, to lead our people differently in a way that's going to actually help our organization to be effective.
Hey, Quintin, have you studied much of how to keep people engaged in this distributed environment?
It's interesting, of course, if you think about a professional services organization, we've always been distributed, either be on client sites or we'll be working remotely. So a lot of it we've actually done, and it's been a bit natural. But what is different now, of course, is we have to serve clients remotely. And so a lot of the thinking that we've done historically in terms of how do we operate remotely effectively has been really, really key for that. And what we've been learning, the types of things that we've been applying, is how do we use the latest technology thinking, the latest approaches to virtual collaboration to be effective in our service of clients, and making sure our external clients are being able to be as effective and able to interact with us as effectively. We heard earlier about the whole relationship creation, and you can imagine in the professional services organization, that's so critical for us. We have to have very good relationships with our clients. And so maintaining those in a virtual environment is just so key. And so figuring that out and working out how to do that well has been really important for us as an organization.
Hey, Quintin, thanks so much for coming on the program today. Stay with us. We'll circle back to you. Thank you. Next up is David Whitaker. David's the CIO at General Dynamics. David, welcome to the program. Good to see you. You there, Dave?
Yeah, sorry. I had a little bit of trouble with my mouse. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So during these really uncertain times, talk about leadership with a steady hand. What does it mean to you, and how have you led?
It's been critical to evolve as a technology leader. We're in a manufacturing space. We manufacture in the DoD space. Our technology my technology compatriots are typical legacy type of technologists. And so we've needed to really step outside of our box. We've found ourselves leading more from the middle. It kind of lends to what Quintin was saying. We have a catbird seat from an IT perspective to see all aspects of the business. And so we've been able to leverage that in order to get out in front of the business. We've had to really stress our agility factor. For how we operate within the business. We've kind of looked and worked around the ABCs, if you want to call it, of on my operational concept, and we really focus on agility. If anything, COVID has driven home the fact that we've got to be much more flexible, much more agile, more out in front of the business. The B part is we need to be much more balanced with regards to what we're approaching. All of a sudden, the human factors become so much more important to how we execute. The uncertainty of the times, the anxiety associated with COVID and being in an area where there's a tremendous amount of that. So that's been a bigger picture. So from an IT or a technologist leader perspective, we've had to up the game, if you will, on that balance on the people side. And then communication. Communication is critical. Things like Zoom have really opened doors for communication across the IT organization, where it's been difficult for a technologist, typically legacy-wise. They sit at a desk, right? I do my thing. And if the business comes and asks me what to do, I can provide them with my expertise, my opinion. Now it becomes much more conducive to start up a Zoom session and talk to the business face to face. So technology has really helped encourage that communication capability. And then really there's a D to this too, right? So it's not just ABCs, but there's the D. We've needed to become much more decisive. So it's not enough to be collecting information. I think Tony, was talking about this waterfall and agile mechanism earlier. You can't sit back and you can't just get more information and digest it in order to deliver a solution. You've got to be pragmatic. You've got to be, in order to be agile, you need to be decisive and move out in a straightforward manner and make those decisive moves.
Excellent, David. Hey, thanks for coming on the program today. We'll circle back to you in a minute. Sure. Next up is Paul Wilner. Paul's the VP of IT and CIO of Pall Corporation. Paul, you're pretty much so new to the Florida HMG group and Florida SIM. How have you been in this in the whole pandemic?
Yeah, pretty good, Hunter. Thanks for inviting me to this. I loved participating when I was up in New York, where our headquarters is. So I'm also a new resident down in Florida. So just a bit about Pall, maybe for folks that don't know us. We're been around for 75 years. We're part of the Danaher umbrella of companies. We're global multi-billion-dollar filter and filtration system manufacturer. We operate in as 3 business units in the life science space and 3 business units in the industrial and commercial space. COVID really for us has accelerated our life science business, where our filters are being used right now in systems and sort of critical customers in this vaccine race. So, again, I think somebody talked about it before about connecting to purpose. We can really see that at Pall. Also, some of our hospitals and medical industry customers are using our filters and systems, and that really is around protecting from airborne diseases. And we've also got filters in airplanes. So we're filtering cabin air and protecting those who are still traveling. So I think most folks also talked about this acceleration to interacting remotely with customers and associates. That has gone pretty well for us, primarily because we took an aggressive approach to enterprise cloud and our digital strategy over time. So kind of the future for us, if we think about the future of work, is to accelerate digital customer interactions. So we continue to sort of drive more and more customers over to our e-commerce platform. We're trying to build out new features and functionalities there. We've launched a few filters and systems now that have IoT connections back. So really trying to improve the customer experience without having to interact physically. I think somebody else talked about this before. The challenge, I think, for us in our business is really around not losing sort of the intimacy that we've been able to establish with our customers and our associates. So, that's what we're working really hard on.
Hey, Paul, thanks so much for coming on the program today. Stay with us. We'll circle back to you. If all the panelists can turn their microphones on, that'd be great. And just kind of like round robin, Paul, it was your question. I love it. When you think about a crisis going to waste, Tony, what have you done to push through something interesting during this crisis moment, the past 100 days?
That's a great question. Clearly, we know that you never want to waste a crisis. So the things that we were forced to do or driven to do, those are the things that really are going to be very useful going forward. Things like accelerating digital and using digital tools, relentlessly focusing on what's important, streamlined decision making we were talking about earlier, allocating the best resources to the most important tasks, breaking down organizational barriers. Those are things that we learned that work very well. I think we knew them already, and now we can take them going forward. Because frankly, now we've done it, we've seen the future, and this is the future how we're going to do business going forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Hey, Andrew, question for you. How would you characterize your leadership style in this crisis, and what's next?
Leadership style during the crisis. That's a good one. I would say that, traditionally speaking, I'm very much a face-to-face type of leader. I like to roll up the sleeves and get close to the individuals on my staff, understand what's, causing them pains and helping to, eliminate roadblocks so they can be successful. And same thing for, my colleagues is very much I like to get right up next to someone and make sure that we really understand their requirements, understand their pain points, and seeing what we can do from a technology and innovation standpoint to resolve those. So the shift, and I think this is probably pretty common for most people, is trying to still connect at that same level through different collaboration platforms like Zoom and others. I think we've been relatively successful at it, but I also think that there is a slight decrease in regards to that connectedness. And so we've really tried to reinforce some more of the social aspects to try to re-engage people at a different level and put them a little bit at ease. I think it was Tony who highlighted a specific factor about the importance to really share information. And I would say, my style has been a lot more shifting to more, not saying that I haven't been transparent in the past, but almost like overly transparent with all things happening at all times to make sure that everyone feels informed, everyone feels as safe as possible, and has a free and open, kind of like the open door policy that would be if you're in the office, but an open question, open dialogue, call me, text me, anything you need. If there's ever a question that you're concerned about, please don't hesitate to reach out. So
excellent. Yeah. Excellent, Andrew. Thanks for coming on the program. Hey, Quintin, when you think about leading in a crisis and leading courageously, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I think really the key thing is to recognize that as an organization, if we're going to be courageous, we've got to make sure we bring our people along with us. And so it's all very well having the leader being courageous and dashing off and not taking the organization with them. And so that the importance of really getting in and saying, right, what is the purpose? And making sure we get in the hearts and the minds of our people. I go back to the whole thinking around reverse generations, and certainly the millennials and the Zs really want to understand that we as leaders think about purpose and think about the reason why we're doing things. So in my mind, being courageous is saying, right, let me see where we're going to. Let me make sure that that's in line with the purpose of what our people want to do, and then step through that and actually lead on that. And then, of course, being the inspirational leader that everyone needs. So the whole focus on getting the vision, understanding the vision, showing the purpose, and then being the inspirational leader that your people need.
Excellent, Quintin. Thanks for coming on the program. Brilliant stuff. Hey, David, when you think about the COVID-19 crisis, has it impacted your digital journey? Has it accelerated the digital journey?
It's really kind of thrown kerosene on the fire. So I had a plan for a digital strategy. It was a little bit harder to progress that plan. COVID has put lit a fire under it. I think it's gotten more attention even from the executive leadership with regards to the need for this digitization. We start to talk about business continuity. We talk about changes in what we are doing as a business. We manufacture munitions and delivery mechanisms, guns. And during this COVID situation, we turned some of our manufacturing scenario or manufacturing facilities to manufacturing masks and hand sanitizer. This is a major shift, right? And all powered by some of the digital transformation activity that we had put in place or had on our roadmap. So it's really accelerated it. It's caused us to be more discreet with regards to drawing a line between our technology and our business performance and making sure that there's a clear line there. It's stretched some of my IT guys. This has been very good.
Excellent. Very exciting. Cool stuff. We'll talk to you more in a future summit. Thanks for coming on the program, David. Hey, Paul, a final question. What's working with you and your team in terms of your leadership style, and how are you igniting your team?
Yeah, I think it's leadership style in this sort of environment forward is an important one. A lot of people have already talked about. You know, I think one of the key things is to have exceptional listening skills, right? And really a higher level of emotional intelligence. And that's something that I've been working, you know, with my team on personally as well, rereading some of the, you know, old books, you know, that I've had. But I think that's sort of a key area. And then I'm finding that, you know, still managers want to manage. They want to micromanage during this kind of environment. And I've kind of banned the term micromanagement with my leadership team. And we're going to something called daily management, right? Because micromanagement implies you're going to tell people what to do. Daily management from the total quality process is more about, you know, asking people, what are you going to work on today? What are you going to work on this week? And how do I help you get there? So those are the key things.
Brilliant stuff. Gentlemen, brilliant panel. Paul, David, Quintin, Andrew, and Tony. I'm going to tell you, one of the top panels in the last 3 months. All 5 of you should go down into the HMG archive as one of the top tech leaders to watch, one of our top tech leaders recognized program, as well as you're welcome to speak at any future upcoming summits. Love to have you back again, both.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on the program. Hopefully you can stay with us. Good to see you all as well. Next up, leading into the future, I'm going to invite Marcus Session back to the program. Marcus is the president of SIM Tampa Bay chapter of obviously SIM, as well as the VP of IT of Tampa International Airport. Marcus?
Hey, Hunter, how's it going?
Awesome.
So good afternoon, everybody. We've had a great event so far. This panel is leading into the future. Just to set the table a little bit, right now we have a lot going on, not just in the industry, but in the world. If you think about it, we have COVID-19, we have civil unrest. We also have both of those situations putting an effect and a strain on the economy. Many of you, probably just like me, just had to go through painful budget processes where we cut millions of dollars out of the tech budget. How do you do that? How do you move your projects forward? What's the new normal? The other side of that is, as you know, David indicated, digital transformation is something we've been trying to push. You know, various organizations get different resistance on that. COVID-19 has been the #1 thing that has moved digital transformation forward. And it did it very quickly, which proves that the organization can move when they want to, when they're compelled to. But now we're kind of in a, you know, lost area here. You have distributed workforces. You have people that are used to managing face-to-face that don't have that anymore. So how do you now manage leading into the future? What does that look like? How do you do it? We got a great panel set up today. We have Tony Leng, Managing Director of Diversified Search, Gary Erickson, Managing Partner of Executive Search Partners, and Misti Fragen, VP Learning, Research, and Culture at Novant Health. So we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to just jump right into it. So Tony, let's start with you. What impact has COVID-19 had on the search industry?
Well, very simply, there was a lull. It wasn't, I don't think, that people didn't want to do search, but they needed to evaluate their cash. They needed to understand where they stood. And so things were put on hold and paused. However, we're coming out of that now. And frankly, if I give you a call now, you know the company that I'm calling about is a strong company because there's been a bit of a differentiation. So that's the current status.
All right, cool. Thank you for that. All right, Gary, what about you? What are the significant business-related challenges or changes we see coming out of the pandemic?
We've heard so far. There's an incredible number of stories, and everybody is saying this crisis has made 2 significant changes. One, it's allowed us to accelerate digitization, and it's probably allowed the CIO to take a bigger place at the table in its executive environment. If he hasn't, if he hasn't seen those kind of changes, I think the company is now going to work with somebody like Tony or I to try and find a new CIO that can make those kind of things happen.
All right. Yeah, and it's one of the things I always say is that I think CIOs in the future, and this is just Marcus's opinion, I think CIOs in the future will actually make very good CEO candidates because of the organizations and verticals outside of finance, IT, you have to generally know or have a foot in every part of the organization. So I think CIOs are very, very well positioned to move into that top spot. Okay, Misti, how do you ensure that team members understand and adopt the culture, especially now you have the pandemic, you have these different things happening, and you're moving into the future. Culture is going to be changing a lot. You know, you heard a lot on this event that people are changing how they do things, how they manage, working from home, sourcing resources, hiring people from all over the place and managing them. That has a big effect on culture. So how do you ensure that people understand and adopt that?
Great question. So part of it is we're really looking at how do we continue to facilitate communication, right? Communication is so key in everything that we do, and making sure we're finding new ways of engagement, listening, brainstorming, and bringing those ideas to the table. Because when you are kind of doing this work from anywhere, which is what COVID has made us do, we're really having to look at how we can continue to keep everybody engaged, make sure our leaders are being able to disseminate the information that they need to, but also making sure that our team members are well taken care of, that they're feeling supported, that they're feeling safe, and that they're also being able to continue to deliver the remarkable care that we're used to doing for our patients. So, you know, we're always looking at new ideas, but I would say communication and really listening are the two biggest keys in that.
Okay, Misti, let's stay with that for a second. We all know that culture is the hardest thing to change. It takes the longest. There's no, the analogy I always use with my team is that I can't, you know, do like the Matrix and stick a thing in the back of your head and program you and say, hey, you're good, you know Kung Fu now, right? So what do you do to sustain the culture, and how do you adjust for change to your culture and keep that momentum going?
Well, you know, as you know, like we're looking at technology, but we're also having the issues of healthcare, right? And they kind of battle each other because technology is moving at the speed of light, where healthcare is more of that dinosaur in the background. So we're having to kind of keep those two things up. But to continue to evolve, it's really about like ongoing feedback. Listening. We do a lot of listening tours. We talk about what does culture mean to our team members? How can we continue to engage them? How can we continue to push change out to them with making them feel comfortable? And, you know, a big thing for me is always asking the question of what does culture mean to you? And then what can we do to be able to facilitate that within the teams and spread that out? It's an ongoing conversation, and I think everybody has to play a role in that in order to create that change. It's something that I feel like we're never going to end doing. I think culture is always evolving, and it needs to in order to continue to push out the advancements that we're looking at. So really, it's again about making sure that we're touching base with people, we're getting that feedback from everybody, and then for people to also see that second step, which is if you're asking for feedback and questions and answers, that they see it actually go into place. So we need to also make sure that we're showing that change at the same time.
Yeah, and that's the theory of continuous improvement, right?
Absolutely.
You know, it's never open. Your iterative process, you keep going forward. Okay, good. So Gary, over to you. You know, we're in a current pandemic. We have all these things going on. The economy is down. Obviously, you know, you say, hey, we created 4.8 million jobs last month. But then you hear every single week, oh, we had another 1.3 million people file for employment. To me, just from where I'm sitting, IT has been relatively somewhat untouched by that, but I could be wrong. You know, what is the current market for IT professionals in Florida?
Thanks. I think IT has been affected in different industries in different ways in different parts of the country, and we've heard other people say that. I did some statistics prior to this on Florida hiring, and Florida's down about 10%, but Orlando's down 20% in terms of hiring, and especially because they're high dependence on the hospitality industry and the travel industry for their employment. Tampa's down about 13% from what I've seen. You may know more up-to-date statistics than I have because that's at the end of May. Across the board, unless you're in the industries that seem to be growing, I think people are pretty much putting on a hold on IT. The kind of industries that are going and hiring are government, insurance, finance, healthcare, energy, online retail, distribution. In our case, we do a lot of work in Michigan. The auto industry is down. We're not seeing a lot of people looking to hire new people there. We do a lot of work in San Francisco, and that market continues to be pretty strong. So I think the answer to your question is it varies where you are and what industry you're in.
And just a quick follow-up to that, are there any industries right now that are particularly stronger than others? Maybe what is your top one or two industries that IT professionals maybe should be looking for opportunities in?
Well, any industry that's technology driven you know, we've heard the people from Zoom, and you've heard the people who are offering online software and online retail and online distribution. Those kind of companies and industries are particularly strong. Anybody who's in the distribution industry is strong. I think manufacturing is somewhat weak. I'd like to ask Tony that too, because he's got probably even a broader perspective on this, because they have more offices than we do.
All right, cool. So Tony, I mean, it's been tossed to you. You want to respond to that?
Well, yeah, look, it depends on the industry type, and geographic is becoming less of an issue. That's my feedback. But really, I want to pick up, if you don't mind, Marcus, on the point that you made earlier about, you know, the role of the CIO and what's really important. Because the CIO is really deeply involved in corporate strategy. Frankly, CIOs have been saving companies at this point. They're deeply involved in the technology strategy. We've all heard the fuel on the fire around digital transformation. Everybody's moving towards modern architectures. Data's the fuel for digital. Everyone wants an Apple front end and an Amazon back end. But the piece that's a little different for me is the emerging leadership skills. And that's about the people roadmap. And that's the part that's kind of, for me, a little different, because this fuel on the fire for leadership styles and approaches, top down, doesn't work anymore, because no one had the game plan. No one had the roadmap. So when I talk to a candidate, it's like, what did you do? And if the person comes across as, well, I did X, Y, and Z, bullshit. They frankly not giving me the truth, because no one knew. So I'm looking for leaders who are able to stand back and listen, show some humility, authenticity, be that person in the center of the team, listening to their team members and moving forward in a looser but more engaged way. And those are the leadership styles that I think are going to be the ones that come to the fore. It's something that I call adaptive resilience, but it's kind of vulnerability, authenticity, openness, humility are some of the hallmarks that are rising from the top. Yes, you've got to have vision, boldness, courage, purpose. Those remain really important, but these other capabilities, I think, are rising to the surface in my book.
All right. And, you know, and the thing about that, you know, going back to my talk about diversity a little bit earlier, the whole thing, why you want to have diverse thinking, diverse thought, diverse people, is you want to create the most flexible and nimble organization you can. And if you have, using the sort of term, if you have kind of the same model cut out of the same mold, you're not going to get that diversity of thought, or you may get it, but it's not going to be as easy. It's not going to be as robust. So that's going to give you the flexibility to end up in a situation where you have a COVID. People may say, hey, I worked at a place where, I worked in another country and we had a similar pandemic. We had to deal with it on a smaller scale, and this is what we did. And that may be something that you wouldn't have had if you didn't look for it, right?
No, I agree with that completely. And, there's diversity and then there's inclusion. And I think that, diversity, you can feed the pipeline and you can develop the funnels and you can recruit the right people. And our firm's called Diversified Search, because that's what one of our big specialties is. But then I keep saying, well, then what about the inclusion element? And that needs to be incredibly deliberate on your part to ensure that that happens within your environment. And that's a little bit about, the listening, the openness, the humility, the acceptance, the inclusion piece becomes really, really important. And so the skill set, the aperture of skills and capabilities that CIOs now need to have, has broadened dramatically. And I think you're right. If CIOs have thrived in this environment, have defined and refined their culture into what I believe it needs to be, they become very open to being more senior in the organization and to take in on CEO slots down the road.
Yeah, and that's, kind of to Misti's point, what you want to happen is you don't want to have, like I talked about it being intentional. It's intentional because you have something to fix. But to Misti's point, once you've gotten to that point, you want to sustain it. And it's really an organic thing that you kind of cultivate, you tend, and you feed, but you don't have to do this Herculean effort every time because it's already a part of your culture. It just kind of grows on its own.
Right.
So, all right. So last, lightning round here, we're running out of time. So what I'll do, we have a great audience here. and obviously a great platform. All of you have things you're passionate about, things that you're into. So, I'm going to give you all one thing, one statement, something that you want to tell that you think will help the attendees here leave with something that maybe they don't know. So we'll start this time with Gary.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that question. What is the one thing that I can think of the people perhaps one of the things that I've been thinking about as I'm listening to this conversation is the emerging role of the CIO and how important that the CIO is to the organization. And I think that I heard one of the earlier HMG panels talk about the CIO's got to be 100% businessman and 100% technologist. I think that's a critical element. You've got to be able to really understand what your business is all about. You've got to know how to lead the business into transformation, because you know more about the business than just about anybody else in the company, which is the point you made earlier, Marcus. And then at the same time, your organization has got to perform. So how are you going to do that? It's a combination of people, technology, organization, agility. You've got to have those kind of skills. One other comment I wanted to make, and you said 1 minute. I apologize. I might be running a little over. I think one of the trends that we've been seeing even before this pandemic is that the number of people taking over CIO positions coming out from outside of IT, which is accelerated from like 10% or 7% in 2011 to 37% in 2019. I think it reflects the change that the companies are needing in terms of their IT leadership. They really do need somebody who understands the business purpose, the direction, and then can orchestrate how to make that happen using IT.
All right. Okay, so Misti, same question to you. What's the one thing, one lesson that you want the attendees to leave with here today?
I think the biggest piece for me is words and actions. I talk about that all the time with my team and with other team members within Novant Health is are you being able to follow up what you're saying you want in culture and in recruiting and leadership development, all of these things? Are you following it up with your own actions, right? If we're saying that we're going to create a culture of learning and we're constantly being able to engage our team members, we really have to walk the walk, right? We have to give opportunities. We have to make sure that our promises are kept and that we're showing true change as leaders. So I think that's probably the biggest key for me is no matter what we're doing, whether we're going through change management, whether we're looking at providing a new way of culture and a new way of working from anywhere, are we making sure that our words and our actions are matching what we're saying, right? We really have to be able to showcase that to our team members. So that would be my biggest piece, is just to make sure that you're following everything up that you're trying to get everybody to do and follow suit with that.
All right, awesome, thanks. And Tony,
very briefly, I'm going to say, thank you, Gary. What you said is absolutely right. Misti, same for you. I just want to add on top of that to say, stay engaged. Thank you, Hunter, for doing this thing and bringing the community together, because you need to stay engaged, you need to be open, and you need to keep learning. This is an incredibly dynamic and fast-changing environment, and you've got to stay plugged in.
All right.
Hey, Marcus. Marcus, Misti, Gary, and Tony, great job today, and really appreciate your help, Marcus.
Awesome.
It really requires you to lean in, to stay open, and to learn, right, and not to check out, right, Tony?
Absolutely right.
Excellent. Marcus, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Gary. Bye now. See you, Misti.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Great. On to our next session, folks. Next up is Securing the Future of Work. Justin Fier from Darktrace. Justin is the Director of Cyber Intelligence and Analysis. Justin, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Hey, Justin, you're out there every day, every week, every month, looking at the changing threat landscape. What are your observations? What's on your mind today? Probably one of the preeminent leading cyber security companies out there, proud national partner of HMG's. What are you seeing?
Yeah. Some of the things have already been alluded to earlier, but digital transformation was mentioned earlier, and I hope the listeners can appreciate that before this, digital transformation projects would take months, if not years. And now we're forced to kind of accelerate these digital transformation projects in moving to the cloud, adopting SaaS products in a matter of days, if not weeks. And unfortunately, that speed oftentimes means we overlook risk and security. And so we're seeing a lot of things like, misconfigurations, just employees not well-versed or trained on using some of these technologies, making mistakes and accidentally exposing sensitive technology. The other big thing we're seeing that already alluded to earlier as well is just the sheer footprint has changed. I can very confidently say the perimeter is no longer, the perimeter's dead. As we're all sitting in our houses right now, VPNing in, and that increases the footprint of attack to all of our corporations. I think it kind of turns shadow IT on its head. I'm looking around in my own office and I've got everything from drones to a half a dozen routers and all sorts of other things that connect to the network, which, as was already mentioned, could be leveraged to gain access, to my machine. Now, I am one of those few, as we talked about earlier, that has adopted micro-segmentation and segmented my home network, but most of the workforce has not done that.
Interesting stuff. When you think, what was the benefit from microsegmentation?
Just preventing, my home personal devices from kind of bleeding over to my work devices. Now, I know that is a tall order to ask everybody out there in the workforce to segment their home networks so that their personal devices are, physically or virtually separated from their corporate network devices. But it just gives me that peace of mind that all my IoT stuff, if it gets compromised, can't hop over to my personal device, and likewise to my corporate device.
When you think of this new distributed work environment, have you seen attacks go up?
Not necessarily up. We've seen a large increase in themes. Email has always been kind of a problem for us. It's the most porous point of your network. We did see a remarkable increase in email-borne spear phishing attacks, specifically COVID-themed and remote work-themed. Just to give you an idea, as recent as 2 weeks ago, I lost count, but it was over 100,000 domain names that had been registered specifically for COVID-19 related spear phishing campaigns. So we're seeing an increase of that, but I can't say specifically we're seeing an increase in successful attacks.
Okay, great. Stay with us, Justin. We'll circle back to you. Thanks so much. Next up is Patrick McNabb. Patrick's the CISO of the Results Company. Patrick, a little bit of context around the Results Company.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So the Results Company, we're a global business process outsourcer. We process business transactions really for a myriad of clients, retail, healthcare. Our headquarters here down in South Florida, but we have a global distribution of our employees in the US, South America, and Asia.
Excellent. When you think about the whole crisis of COVID and the pandemic, how has it impacted your whole environment?
A lot. So we were very kind of in the call center business. About 95% of our employees really are taking phone calls, doing business transactions for our customers. Delivery of work from home capability was like fast and furious and was super critical to our business. We're highly regulated, PCI and HIPAA, SOC 1, SOC 2. We have unique customer requirements around fraud and other type of things. And so we really had to go fast to deliver a scalable, secure, compliant infrastructure. And it's really led to be a market differentiator for us.
Excellent. Interesting. Any surprises in the current environment?
No, some of this technology was really new for the company, for IT. And so things like WVD in the cloud and things like identity security and how we deal with, single sign-on and multi-factor and moving identities home as opposed to in the cloud, that was new and exciting. So, that whole concept of, never let an emergency go to waste. I mean, I love that as a CISO, and I'm always kind of in the emergency part of it, but we definitely could push a lot of our agenda forward and keep our employees secure.
Hey, Patrick, I see you have a friend right there with you.
Yeah, speaking of the cat walking across that's my security puppy. Yeah.
Hilarious. Very charming. Hey, so when you think of educating management, senior management, Patrick, on the new expenditures or the new strategy, how did that discussion go? This company, they're very security conscious, which is great for this kind of job. A lot of it was moving into the cloud, moving to SaaS-based services,
that kind of, zero trust concept and identity is a new perimeter and all those buzzwords. After kind of explain the importance and why that's really important, especially as the workplace moves at home, I really had some advocates, so it wasn't that challenging here. I mean, we obviously COVID hit our bottom line, right? And it was make it better, cheaper, / free or whatever. So it was also really interesting to kind of look outside the box and utilize technologies that we hadn't utilized to its fullest before.
Okay, great. Patrick, stay with us. We'll be back in a minute. Aileen Alexander. Aileen, are you on the line?
I am. Good to see you, Hunter.
Oh, excellent. Great to see you. Aileen is a managing partner at Korn Ferry out of the Philadelphia office now, right?
That's right.
We've been collaborating for quite some time. In your space, as it relates to security, do you want to give a little kind of tap dance there on defining space?
Sure. Yeah. So at Korn Ferry, I co-lead our cybersecurity practice. So we come at this from the people, the organizational, and the cultural perspective. So one of the questions we've been asked is in terms of hiring. Where is cyber sit? And it's one that we've recognized from a number of our companies, particularly pending the business needs. It's been a deemed mission critical or priority for the business. So folks like Patrick and his leadership, if there wasn't a CISO in place, there's been an ask for an executive who can truly have that seat at the table, or in some cases, elevating the role. So definitely something we've seen in the marketplace. With that, just like we've seen with digital acceleration to a certain degree, that and Patrick and Justin probably have a point of view here, but we've seen increased recognition in terms of what's needed from the business side, the education and the awareness campaigns, if you're going to make investments, right, and just in terms of protecting those crown jewels. So an opportunity there too from a security cultural acceleration to a certain degree.
And are you seeing a lot of activity in the job market?
We are. I mean, it's intentional. Most of that, a lot of that activity we saw early on in critical infrastructure. To a certain degree, I'm seeing Justin nod. So we have some alignment there. So we definitely saw it there. I also think of certain businesses. When they move to applications, looking at how their business model is shifting, we're seeing some emphasis there. One of the things we picked up in the marketplace, and this is no secret to anyone on the line, is there continues to be the dearth of talent, particularly at those technical junior and mid ranks. So that hiring continues to be a bit tougher in this marketplace. It's just because we don't have the talent pool, right? So this is the time to continue to jump in or look at cyber as a job profession.
What do you look for in a CISO that you think will be a good fit for an average enterprise or a fast moving enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, I think the technical dimensions are really table stakes at this stage. I mean, this, I think, Hunter, we've talked over the years, there was sort of CISO 1.0, and again, this listening to Patrick, there's sort of CISO 3.0 or 4.0. It's a lot of the attributes we look for in a CIO, a CTO, a CEO. I mean, this is a business leadership role. So first and foremost is the business grounding foundation, that ability to take a risk posture, work and engage with all the internal stakeholders as well as those external stakeholders. Definitely, skills that are required. The boardroom. I mean, for better or for worse, you're in the boardroom. Potentially here on a quarterly basis. So those abilities. But I think now, top seat, they know how to anticipate, they know how to navigate. CISOs know how to looking for those abilities to communicate, listen, learn, and adapt. Those are really what we're looking for.
Excellent, Aileen. I'll circle back to you in a minute. Again, thanks for coming on the program. Hey, Justin, when you think of this whole pandemic and crisis that we're going through, as companies navigate through it both digitally and the transformation agenda, keeping it safe and secure, what are you seeing out there now?
Yeah, so I mean, this is one of the reasons Darktrace kind of had to pivot and very quickly, kind of adapt to this new environment. But as I mentioned earlier, a massive increase in cloud and SaaS adoption. This is what cloud and SaaS was designed for. And so we're already operating in that space, but we had to kind of amplify it and make it even better. So very quickly, we pivoted as well to add additional visibility into that SaaS market. And we've got an entire team of developers constantly adding additional visibility connectors into other SaaS offerings. That, and then just, again, as I already alluded to, email. The one thing I do want to add is the reason I was shaking my head to the critical infrastructure is I'm really glad to hear that. That's important, especially if you've been following the news and whatnot. And we've been seeing a large shift in that. Manufacturing, which we don't necessarily think of as critical infrastructure, actually is, especially during this time in this pandemic. Food processing plants, you wouldn't think of national critical infrastructure, but they very much are during these times. And so we've seen a major increase across our manufacturing clients trying to, gain additional visibility, maintain that uptime, verify that they've got visibility into the entire manufacturing floor as well. So it's been a very interesting time, but those are the big things that we've seen.
Justin, Darktrace is a very interesting company if folks don't know it. What makes Darktrace uniquely different in a very crowded space?
Yeah, so I'm proud to say we were one of the first in the cyber space to kind of adopt, the AI, way of life. 7 years ago when we first kind of started, it was machine learning, which is now turned into the AI buzzword that we all know. But I think it's just, it's our approach, modeling our technology after the human immune system, which is, very relevant today for obvious reasons, being able to autonomously respond in your network without any sort of human interaction. And then the last thing that I think is most important, that is in line with what we've already talked about today is augmenting the workforce. We clearly don't have enough people out there to do the jobs that we need. And so we've put a lot of focus into designing software that can not only be used by those junior people that we talked about earlier that need jobs, but also taking the pressure off of them. So we've actually, we've watched our own analytical team for the last 4 years actually, collected data on them, and using supervised machine learning trained our system to ask a lot of the same questions that a human analyst like myself would. And what we're seeing across our entire customer base is their teams don't necessarily have to triage and go and hunt through these things anymore. The AI analyst does it all for you, and all you have to do is kind of process the report and verify the findings. So I think that's one of the most unique things about us is just trying to solve that problem we've been discussing for the last 5 years, which is the skills shortage.
Excellent, Justin. Thanks for coming on the program, and thanks to Darktrace's support of the HMG platform. Great to see you. Hey, Patrick, when you think of the work from home environment, this new hybrid model, and do you see an end to when people will come back?
We think there'll be a certain percentage of our agents that will always be at home. I mean, our customers are demanding, now that we have that service, it's secure service, people are wanting it. And then I think people also want a extreme flexibility. Florida's shutting down again, it's not shutting down again, or whatever. We got to send people home, and so being able to do that at speed, now that we've kind of set it up for ourselves, is pretty easy to scale. So we're actually looking at some of the, more logistical problems. How do we make sure that a home circuit is acceptable in a third world country? Or how do we get PCs to there, and do we ever get them back? And how do we do that securely, and all of that? So we think that will definitely be part of our DNA of the future, and probably a fairly significant one, depends on the client.
Excellent. Hey, Patrick, thanks for coming on the program today. Great to have you here. Really appreciate it. Hey, Elaine, when you think of leadership skills, what are you looking for in leadership skills for your next candidate?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I'll sort of say 3 C's just in general. Curiosity, creativity, and collaboration. I think, having those capabilities are needed in terms of any candidate we're looking at, whether it's, again, a CIO, a CTO, or a CISO. But it all comes down, we emphasize the softer attributes, right? The business pieces, understanding the business first, bringing in those leadership components, being able to we just talked about this hybrid model we'll all be operating in and, for some time. So those ability to connect with your people, maintain a sense of culture and connectivity, and being able to influence through all of that. So again, I think it's the navigation skills, the communication skills, the listening and learning skills, the inclusive skills that was mentioned by Marcus here just a bit ago on the other panel. I think all those are only going to be heightened, not just today, but on the horizon.
Oh, excellent stuff. Aileen, great to see you. And thanks again for coming on the program. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you.
Great. Aileen, Justin, Patrick, great job. Really appreciate your engagement. Next up, Brian Brockway, the VP and CTO of Commvault. Brian's a real industry pro, a former practitioner himself in the industry, probably 3+ decades long. I mean, some of us want to shorten our resume at that point, right? But when you think about it, Brock, today we've been talking about digital innovation, digital transformation. Every technology is a technology company. Every company is a technology company or enabled by technology, as Harry appropriately pointed out. More than ever, without a doubt, full stop, every company is a data company. So with data, with increased dependency on data, interdependency on data, and data is the new oil, if you will, or grease for all of business, what is it that Commvault does that really helps secure the data platform in the data center?
Great point, Hunter. And so I think from our perspective, and you hit a spot on, while the data is critical, data is flowing a lot faster these days and moving through the system, there's an increased dependency to say, how do I think about recovery around my data sets too? Because for all the great opportunities I think we've been hearing on the conversations today, every one of those opportunities and benefits only persists and increases as long as the data keeps flowing behind it. So that's been a key focus for us for many years of protecting and making sure you've got kind of a recovery first mentality around your data set. And that scales and that grows and that keeps at agile pace with your business.
Thanks, Brock. Hey, and Brock, a little context. I think your industry background is important as a thought leader.
Happy to say, yeah, and I won't go into too many years in the past, but I have been spending the last many years inside the data protection and recovery space. Before then, when I came over to Commvault, I had come out of the analyst community. I'd spent a number of years with Gartner. So in a lot of these strategic initiatives, coming back in and saying, how do we start to really transform and make improvement through business and technology? We learned that early on. That was kind of the key secret sauce. That's what we've been using in the last many years at Commvault, in coming forward to say, how do we preserve that benefit and make sure it's scalable on a go-forward basis?
So when you think about whether cross industry, whether it's banking, retail, travel, hospitality, every business, oil, the oil vertical, why has data all of a sudden become the gold or oil of the whole system?
Well, I think you actually hit it on there. It's the gold. It's one of the top value assets, and just like having a supply of gold sitting inside your garage, you've got to make sure that you have enough security and safety built in and around that set of gold. So I think what we've been seeing in a lot of cases is, just as you were touching on a bunch of the different points through some of the prior conversations, there's the security aspects of ensuring, do you have a strong, I'm going to call it secure foundation built around your data? Do I have copies of it? Do I have good security separation? Have I gone off and have I built some of the validation that in the event that something bad did happen, how quickly can we react back to it? And I'd say these days, that reaction, as you go back and look at the daily headlines coming through on ransomware and destructive data events occurring on a fairly regular basis, It's no longer just a Wall Street problem or the financial banking problem. This is happening up and down the spectrum of verticals, everything from K through 12 organizations to state and local governments to large multinational corporations. When one of these events hits you on a large scale, and it's not just a couple of Bitcoins to get a handful of laptops back, in more and more cases, it's being able to go back and rebuild your entire IT enterprise data structure from your back end, from your backups. Something nobody kind of built for, nobody architected for in the past. And the longer it takes, the longer you're out of business. That's where the dollars really start to add up pretty quickly.
How big can they add up to be?
Good question. Accenture and a few others have kind of put the starting impact numbers around $10 million per event when you factor in all the impacts and things like that. We've helped a number of customers. In fact, one just last September, manufacturing had to shut down their supply chain for almost a month as they went back into rebuild, restart, and kind of get everything flowing again. That was about a $100 million event. And then we were also a key strategic participant with a couple of large globals that went through the non-PETIA event 2 years ago. That's the most public one on record. That was a weapons of mass destruction focused against data sets. Those numbers started off at about $4 billion for the event. All the cyber insurance payouts these days are adding it up to about $8 billion. So $8 billion for something that came in and took about 15 minutes to wipe, if you want to put the largest event on record on a dollar per event basis.
Fascinating stuff. So how do you coach your clients or prospects through a readiness model and how to look at where you are as a benchmark?
Great question. A lot of it starts back with your foundation. So come back over your data protection strategies today. Where are we capturing copies of data for how long? There was a movement 4 or 5 years ago to shorten cycles. We only need 5 days because nobody ever goes back to a change more than 5 days ago. Until we saw a lot of hospitals that were, had a violation and a penetration 30 days in the past, and they needed to go back to 35 days in the past to go back and find clean data. So a lot of this starts with that foundation, copy strategies. Do you have?
Hey, Brock, I think we lost you there. I'm not sure what happened.
Sorry. Am I back on? There we go. Sorry, hit the button by mistake. Yeah, so it's the foundation, it's the security, it's ensuring you have different role separations in the environment. So if somebody did lose a set of credentials, they can't only damage the front end, but you want to also ensure they can't just also go to the back end and delete everything. Once the foundation is set, then you start to think through your tool sets of, how can I actually go back and test and validate? I think somebody made a mention earlier that, with a lot of the speed of the digital transformation now, it's much more of a business continuity versus a DR. DR in the past is kind of a paper-based exercise that hopefully you never had to pull the notebook off of the shelf. Business continuity these days, though, is, you may have one of these events next Monday, and then you have to be prepared once you get it all put back together. Do you have another event, the following week? So it's testing the system, ensuring you've got good classification and controls. You can't use a gold policy everywhere. It's too expensive. And then at the end of it, you tie it all back together with some automation to say, how do we put it together? How do we use some of that AI to measure our ready state and ensure, we've got everything covered and we can sleep soundly at night, or let's expose the issues today when we can fix them, in the light of day, not after an event has already occurred.
What does the automate piece look like?
That's automates. It's a little bit of the automation of some of those exercises, converting data sets, coming over and saying, can I take data sets that were VMware based and I want to automatically convert them and put them up into maybe Amazon, Azure, or Google as cloud native. It's also where you start to use some of the classification AI methods. So how do I have the system kind of learn and measure itself? I always have to be figuring out the degrees of physics, especially if you're going to go back and rebuild your enterprise. Something that probably took you 2 or 3 years to develop. Now, if you have to be tasked to say, how do I go back and redo the same experiment in 2 or 3 days? That's where automation, physics, a little bit of AI and everything else kind of comes together to say, how well can I automate it together as a set, be prepared, and then also make sure that it automatically can adjust as we do, changes in the environment on a regular ongoing basis.
Sounds like really good advice. Any other advice to get a benchmark of where you are in your environment and where you might need some help?
Yeah. So what we did is we did take kind of from a lot of those customer experiences where they didn't plan ahead, and we had to get in and try to react back to get them to current business as best we can. Those became a lot of the different best practices. We actually wrote a nice field guide. I added it into the chat sessions as one of the links. I prematurely, I think, dropped it in by mistake, but it's a good overview on some of those practices that people have found, and call it the best practices and the worst practices to look for in your organization to say, can you go in and start to expose and control some of those gaps, when you're in a good position to be proactive versus being reactive.
Hey, Brock, it's great to have you on the program. Any final comments?
Nope. Always happy and love the conversation earlier. And I think that's what we're seeing in this whole new speed of data starting to move in and out of the clouds and everything else. One that we've been finding is a lot of new organizations are starting to proactively think recovery from day one. As we build this new container-based Kubernetes type solution, how do we think about ensuring we can have compliance and recoverability built in from day one? It's not something you want to try to apply later on. That's where it gets a lot harder.
Excellent. Hey, Brock, how can people get in touch with you and the Commvault folks?
Sure. So in the panel, I dropped my email address, bbrockway@commvault.com. And I think we'll probably also send a thank you follow-up, but by all means, we're not trying to always go off and sell things. A lot of what we're doing is sharing that innovation, best practice, worst practices, as others have gone through to say, how do we ensure the world is a better place for data and keep more of the bad actors at bay.
Hey, Brock, thanks for coming on the program and appreciate Commvault supporting us as a national partner.
Oh, we love it. Thanks a lot. Great day. Great conversations.
Take care. We'll see you soon. Hey, so what another amazing summit, world-class agenda. I thought the summit and the participants really, truly delivered world-class thought leadership and in this very unusual time, let's face it, right? But a big shout out and thanks to our partners, Commvault, again, Zoom, national partner, Illumio, T-Mobile Systems, Darktrace, T-Mobile for Business, Darktrace. And then as well our strategic partners, association partners, Central Florida, South Florida, and Tampa Bay. You guys are great, great job in helping build out the event. Again, the panelists, the thought leaders were excellent, and the presenters were excellent. Please dial in and stay connected. We probably are running at least 2 summits a week, plus other webinars for our partner companies, and there's a lot more coming from HMG here in the near future. Take care, be safe, and lead courageously. Thanks.